God is always at work, silently guiding, positioning, and delivering his people for his purpose, calling us to live with courage, faith, and unwavering trust in his sovereignty. Devotional for such a time as this. Lessons from the Book of Esther. There are seasons in life when God seems silent. No clear answers. No visible direction. No dramatic signs. The Book of Esther reminds us that even in those moments, especially in those moments, God is still moving. The story begins in a place of power, wealth, and human pride. Kings make decrees. Feasts are held. Decisions are made quickly, often without wisdom. And in the middle of it all, ordinary people, Mordecai and Esther, live quietly, seemingly unnoticed. But nothing about their lives is accidental. Esther is an orphan, raised by Mordecai, living far from her homeland. She doesn't appear powerful. She doesn't seem influential. Yet God is already positioning her, placing her exactly where she needs to be, long before the crisis ever comes. That's how God often works. He prepares before he reveals. He positions before he calls. There may be things in your life right now that feel uncertain, but they are not random. God is arranging circumstances you cannot yet see. Then the conflict comes. A man named Haman, driven by pride and hatred, rises to power. His ego is easily offended, and instead of dealing with one man, he plots to destroy an entire people. With a single decree, death is scheduled. Fear spreads. Mourning begins. And suddenly, Esther's position is no longer just a blessing. It's a responsibility. Mordecai sends her a message that echoes through generations. Who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? That question is not just for Esther. It's for you. You are where you are for a reason. Your influence, your opportunities, none of them are by accident. But stepping into that purpose requires courage. Esther knows the risk. Approaching the king without being called could mean death. She feels the weight of fear, the pressure of the moment, the cost of action. And yet she chooses faith. If I perish, I perish. That is not recklessness. It is resolve. It is the kind of faith that says obedience matters more than outcome. Too often, we wait for certainty before we act. But God calls us to trust him enough to step forward, even when the outcome is unknown. Esther doesn't rush blindly. She fasts. She seeks God. She moves with both courage and wisdom. And when the moment comes, she speaks. And everything begins to turn. Not all at once. Not instantly. But decisively. A sleepless night. A forgotten record remembered. Proud man humbled. A faithful man honored. God begins to reverse what seemed irreversible. That's another truth Esther teaches us. God's timing is perfect. There may be delays, but there are no accidents. What looks like coincidence is often divine orchestration. Haman builds gallows for Mordecai, but ends up being destroyed by his own plan. The decree of destruction cannot be erased, but a new decree is issued, empowering God's people to stand, defend, and overcome. And that matters. God doesn't just remove the problem, he strengthens his people to face it. Victory in Esther is not passive. The people must rise. They must act. They must stand together. Faith is not just believing, it is engaging. And when the day comes, what was meant for destruction becomes a day of triumph. Sorrow turns into joy. Fear turns into celebration. Oppression turns into freedom. And a new tradition is established, Purim, a reminder that God delivers. Because God doesn't want his people to forget. And neither should we. Every victory, every answered prayer, every moment of deliverance is meant to be remembered and shared, not just for encouragement, but for identity. You are part of a story where God rescues, restores, and redeems. The Book of Esther ends quietly, but powerfully. Mordecai is elevated, not for his own glory, but for the good of his people. He seeks their welfare. He speaks peace. He leads with integrity. That is what godly leadership looks like. Not power for self, but service for others. And that is the final lesson. God raises people up not just to bless them, but to use them. So as you reflect on this devotional, remember, God is working even when unseen. You are positioned for a purpose. Courage is required in critical moments. Faith must move, not just believe. And when God brings victory, it is complete. You may not see the full picture yet, but one day you will look back and realize He was guiding every step, and you were exactly where you needed to be for such a time as this.